Awesome, cool. The revenue cycle, the power of customer success. I think it's pretty safe to say that things are a little different these days. Shit's a little crazy in our world today, if you think about it. What with the hurricanes and the storms and the earthquakes, and I grew up in the Bay Area. I grew up in Palo Alto. I've lived there most of my life, and honestly, last night was something I saw for the first time in my life. We had a thunder and lightning storm for 3 hours at the airport. So I didn't get here until 4 o'clock in the morning last night, or this morning, 6 hours ago. It's pretty fun. But I think it's also safe to say that, things are different in the world of technology. Things are different in the ways in which we engage with our customers. If you think about it, 15 years ago, it's easy to say that maybe our computers were a lot bigger than our bodies, whereas today, maybe our bodies are a lot bigger than our computers. But the reality is, how we engaged with customers 15 years ago is dramatically different than today. I think Brad did an amazing job of articulating how Adobe went through this transformation to rethink how they're going to engage with their customers. 15 years ago, I think the process in which we engaged with our customers was very linear and much more transactionally focused. Yes, marketing was generating awareness, and yes, sales were, actually the sales team it's much more of a transaction. It was singular in focus, right? I had a tangible item, whether it was a piece of software or a physical item, and I sold it to you. And then guess what? I was done, right? And then customer success didn't really exist. It was more like customer support, right? Frontline support, and oh, by the way, professional services, because you had these 6 to 9 month implementation cycles. And then what did we do? We just continued to sell them support every year. And that was the way we engaged with our customers 15 years ago. But with the introduction of SaaS, our world is way different now. With the introduction of SaaS, we have to think about things differently because our engagement is dynamic and it's constant and it's ongoing. It's never ending, right? If you think about it, marketing, yes, they're continuing to focus on awareness, but they're actually thinking about nurture. They're not just thinking about, I want you to understand our brand and take a look at us. They're thinking like, you know what? I actually have to continually build my relationship with you every single month. In fact, on the sales side, guess what? We're constantly thinking about delivering value to our customers every single month because that's how we're going to get paid because of this recurring revenue model. So the way in which we're engaging with our customers is so totally different. In fact, customer success exists now as a result of SaaS, I would argue. Because we're not just focused on support, frontline support. We're not just focused on implementation. We're focused on adoption. We're focused on renewals, on upsell. We're focused on the long-term relationship with our customers. Now, one of the things I would argue, and by the way, I'm a fanatical believer about customer success. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. One of the things that I would argue is over the last 15 years, the thing that's actually changed the most in the way in which we engage with our customers is actually customer success. I truly believe that this is what's changed the most, and in fact, it's also one of the most important functions in an organization today. Period. So you're welcome. Your job matters in a big way. What I fundamentally believe, is this. The question that I have for you is so which roles are responsible for driving revenue in an organization? 15 years ago, you would probably say, sales. That's it. That's their job. Today, I would argue it's very different. Today, I would argue that each and every one of you, in fact, I would argue that every single role in the company is focused and should be focused on revenue. Now, notice one word I didn't say. I didn't say sales. I said revenue. In fact, I don't like the word sales, which is crazy because I've spent my entire life in sales. But I think we need to shift, much like how our world has shifted, much like how our roles have shifted. I think all of us need to shift to think about revenue, because revenue is a long-term conversation. It's a different engagement with our customers. It's a different way of thinking about working with our customers and engaging with our customers. So now the question you should be asking yourself is, in a modern organization, what does that actually mean to become a revenue driver in customer success? Are you telling me to become a salesperson? Sales-oriented? I mean, Brad was kind of alluding to it with his framework, which, by the way, I hope you guys wrote that down. That is badass. Totally badass. Super impressed. So you should probably be asking yourself this question. Well, so what does that actually mean in my organization to become a revenue driver in the world of customer success? This might ruffle some feathers, but just bear with me. And maybe the first question you're asking yourself is, what the hell am I doing up here? Why me? I'm this venture capital guy. Actually, not really. I'll tell you my story here in a second. So I spent the last 15 years at a couple cool companies, Google, Salesforce, and Box, and helped them grow from just a handful of customers and a few hundred employees to a couple billion in revenue and public. And what I learned was what I want to share with you over the next 20 minutes. Now, my role now is a little different. I'm no longer on the operating side. I'm actually now on the venture side, which is crazy. I got pretty lucky. I'm now a growth partner at a venture capital firm called Emergence Capital. Our focus is Series A and B investments, early stage companies, but we're hyper-focused on B2B SaaS. That's all we do. We're the first investors in Salesforce and SuccessFactors and Steelbrick and Yammer and Box, Viva. So we've done okay. Not too bad. What's interesting is, over the last 15 years before I jumped ship, is I learned a lot. And more specifically, and one of the things that I was really, really excited about is learning more about how do we better support our customers. Because in the SaaS world, that is our job. You know, the crazy thing about SaaS, it's really, really easy to buy a product in this SaaS world. Guess what? It's just as easy to get rid of it. It's just as easy to get rid of it. I can turn it off and there's 10 other products just like it. So it's up to all of us to ensure that our customers are happy, wildly successful. And in early stage companies, that's one of the things that I profess the most. Don't go hire more salespeople. Don't spend more money on marketing. Focus on your customers because they're going to teach you the most. And by making them wildly successful, you're more apt to be able to go do it again. Because you have to learn that playbook. So what I want to share with you over the next 20 minutes or so is what I learned and how all of us can make that shift to becoming revenue drivers in customer success. Because that's what it is. So I got 4 tips for you. You ready? Come on. You guys ready? All right. Thank you. Wow. Good God. Love that. I can use that. I'm going to feed off of that. And my coffee. Coffee, whatever I said. Yeah, I know. Some of you guys got that. Thank you. All right. So here are my 4 tips for you. 4 tips for helping customer success become revenue drivers. I'm going to go through each one of these. First, it starts with shifting our focus. First and foremost, it's a mindset. Secondly, build a key CSM team. And I'm going to talk about what that is because we did this at Box and we had crazy results, incredible success around that. Third, train. You got to train your CS team. You have to deliver value to them. You got to help them shift. And then lastly, get on message. And both Dave and Brad were alluding to this, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So first one, tip number 1, shift your focus. At the end of the day, in order to become a revenue driver, we have to change our thinking. We have to move beyond just focusing on adoption and implementation and integrations and just use cases. We have to be thinking about the long game. Because our customers, not only do we need a high NPS score, yeah, that's great, but you know what? We need to keep them happy. We need to keep them buying. We want to continue to focus on upgrading them or adding seats or upgrading them to a new edition. And you in customer success have the best opportunity to do that, right? Because you guys are trusted advisors. You're there on the front line to help our customers be successful and get the most value out of the investment that they made. And so in that, you have that opportunity to help them see how they can get more value, to help them to understand why it makes sense to add additional products, why it makes sense that more people need to be on your product. So it starts with a mind shift. And I'm not saying that you have to, put your sales hat on, But I am saying go back to your organizations and say, guess what? From this moment on, we are now revenue drivers. We are responsible for driving revenue in this organization. That's why you'll have a seat at the table if you don't already. That's why everyone will care, because you're adding dollars to the bottom line. But it starts with the mind shift, that this is not just a sales function, this is a company-wide function. It's a company-wide responsibility. That's tip number one. Starts up here. Tip number two, build a key CSM team. This is cool. So at Box, we decided, because one of the things that I found in customer success organizations across most companies is, and this might sound familiar, is you hire a CSM, you give them 1,000 accounts, right? And they're focused on one or two key metrics, whether an NPS score or adoption, right? And so what do? They just kind of churn and burn through all these customers. They're just basically rapid response. So we decided that, our CSMs have incredible relationships with our customers. And they also have an insane amount of insight and knowledge about our customers that is not often shared across the organization. Am I right? Right? You kind of keep it in your own little silo. And so what we decided to do was build this thing called the key CSM team. What we did was we took away a ton of accounts. We just gave them a handful of accounts to focus on. And then we aligned them very, very closely with their AEs. And then we gave them access to every resource possible: product marketing, product, engineering, sales leadership, our executive team. And we said, you know what? Your job is now focused on net retention. It's not just focused on adoption and implementation and integration. It's focused on net retention. And we're going to pay you a quarterly bonus based on net retention. Net retention is defined as upsell and churn. So I'm not just looking at my NPS score. I'm not just looking at adoption rates. I'm looking at, how healthy is this account and where's the opportunity? Because I have access to more information, because you know what? Anytime you have sales in your title, no one wants to talk to you. It's true. It's true. You have customer success in your title? Oh yeah, I want to talk to you. Just think about it. It's like semantics. Customer success, cool. I want to talk, because you're going to help me. You're going to help me be successful. And oh, by the way, if I was the buyer, my ass is on the line. So I need to be successful. So we took this small team of people, gave them a handful of accounts, aligned them really tightly with their AEs, changed their comp plan, which I'll talk about in a second, and told them to focus just on net retention. And what happened? Well, first thing we had to do is we had to realize, because guess what? A lot of people are coin operated. And if you're going to take away a bunch of accounts, you're going to have me focus on upsell and churn. Well, pay me for it. And so we did. We put them on a quarterly bonus plan. The difference is most companies, and what we did the same thing, is you spiff people, right? You spiff your CS organization you'll spiff them on churn, right? Or you'll spiff them on upsells. Well, a spiff forces someone to focus on just one account, right? Because they're like, I'm going to look through my entire kind of customer base, and I'm going to look for that one customer that I could potentially get that spiff off of. We don't want that behavior. We know money drives behaviors, right? Because in the sales side, it certainly does. So why not on the CS side? And so we created a comp plan that actually bonused them on a quarterly basis on their net retention numbers. And we actually created some accelerators in there. So if they were 105 to 110% of net retention for the quarter, they got 110% of their bonus. Higher than that, they got a higher bonus. So there was more incentive for them to really dig in. What it also did is it drove the behaviors of making sure that they focused on the core. Because you can't focus on upsell unless a customer is got the foundations in place, right? You can't focus on upsell and churn unless they're using the product, unless they're integrated, right? Unless it's implemented. So it forced everyone to focus on the foundations in order to think about the long term. It had to, right? And so all of a sudden we shifted behaviors. And guess what? It was wildly successful, crazy successful. Here are some of the results. The core CS team came in at 89% gross retention with 113% net retention, which they considered was best in class. The key CSM team had a 94% gross retention, 118% net retention, and look at that. They added $6.2 million to the bottom line. Do you think our executive team was excited about that? Hell yeah, happy to pay. Totally happy to pay, right? One of the things that I highly recommend, by the way, in the beginning when you're kicking this off, is pay your CSMs for everything. So if the AE actually closes an upsell deal for 100 additional seats, or they upgrade to a different edition, pay your CS person on that. So pay double, who cares? We're changing behaviors, and incentives change behaviors. Yes, and it also helps if you're Box and you raise $600 million. I get it, yeah. But it's true. That's what helps drive changing behaviors. So that's the key CSM team. Tip number 3, train, train, train. One of the things we're trying to do is we're asking our CSMs to kind of shift the way in which they engage with their customers, right? To almost kind of become salespeople, but not really. And so if we're going to do that, one of the things we have to do is we have to invest in them. We have to help them understand what it takes to actually get someone to quote unquote buy. I'm going to set this down because it feels weird walking around with it. And I'm going to walk around anyway. It's way more fun. I hate being on stage. So what do I mean by train, train, train? What it means is I want you to think of your CSMs as that frontline connector to your customers. And so they need to understand what it takes to actually get someone to respond. There's nothing worse than a customer buys and you want to help them get set up and integrated and start adopting and getting the most value out of the product, and no one will respond. Does that ever happen to you? Anybody? Right? So like, how do you get your CSMs to not just be like a typical SDR? Spray and pray. I called, they're not responding, right? I can't actually get them to adopt a product because they can't integrate it and they won't respond. Well, okay, let's train them on how to get someone to engage. It's not that difficult. They have to have a compelling reason for why they're reaching out to that person right now. So train them on that. Train them on how to actually run a meeting. Don't take that for granted, by the way. Most salespeople don't even know how to run a meeting right. They put up an agenda slide and off they go. And they throw up all over themselves because they talk about themselves. They train them on how to actually run a meeting effectively. Train them on how to have discovery conversation, real discovery, because that's what we're trying to do. You know, I'm in the business of making sure that we're providing a solution that exactly fits. I don't want to waste your time or mine. You made an investment. I want to make sure you get the most out of it. So let's spend a few minutes so I can better understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish. I mean, Brad alluded to this before, right? If you're not really clear about what everyone's trying to accomplish, then what the hell are we doing? And by the way, discovery, this isn't like a sales tactic. This is about having a conversation to better understand what they're trying to accomplish. And then lastly, how do you handle objections? Because guess what? Just because someone buys it doesn't mean that everybody is bought in the organization, right? Right? So you think you're going to get some pushback? Hell yeah, you are. How do you handle that? Most people think that these are just skills that salespeople go through. This is what salespeople do. Bullshit. I'm sorry. These are what I call human skills. Right? So I don't care what role you're in. You need to know how to do this. And so hire someone. Find your sales enablement team and bring them on board to help your CS team. Julia, are you here? OpenGov? Hey, there she is. We did this exact same thing at OpenGov when I was at Box, because our CS leader left Box and she went to OpenGov, and I trained our entire CS team while I was at Box. And so she's like, will you come do this over at OpenGov for us? And it was crazy, right? Because it was a shift. Here's this person coming in who's focused purely on sales for my entire life, and I'm coming to speak to a CS team, and they're like, what the hell are you doing? We're not salespeople. I know you're not. But you deal with customers. You have the same kind of conversations. We're trying to shift behavior. All we're trying to do is what's best for our customers, right? So invest in training in them. Super important. Tip number 4, get on message. Your customer success reps and managers are at the front line. When a salesperson sells a product to a customer, do you think it's possible that customer forgets who you are and what you do and the value that you might deliver to us? Think it's possible? right? So when your customer success rep or customer success manager gets on the phone with a customer or they go to the customer, you kind of need to re-educate, re-evangelize. In fact, maybe it's not to the one person who is your champion, it's to everybody else, because you need buy-in from everybody else in order to get that adoption level. So make sure you get everybody on message. So certify your CS reps the same way you certify your sales reps. Certify them on the message. Who are we? What do we do? Why is that important? How is it differentiated? Why is it valuable? It's so important. Treat them as if they're your salespeople, but they're not, because they don't have sales in their title. They have success, which is actually a better title. One of the interesting things when it comes to getting on message that I think is critical, and again, Dave and Brad were alluding to this, but the simple fact is customer success managers are on the front line. So customer success managers actually own what I call the last 20 yards. And Brad was alluding to this as like the last millisecond or whatever. Here's what I mean by that. You guys understand the personal impact that a product has on an individual. When a salesperson goes into a company and sells the product to the organization, they speak broadly. Oh, here's what it's going to do for your company. Here's what it's going to do for your customers. But what's way more valuable and way more effective is when you can make that personal. How is Sue, the mid-level marketing manager in Ohio that's divorced with 2 kids and one of them sick at home, how is her life going to be different as a result of using your product? Because guess what? We can all relate to Sue or Bob or Joe. What does your product actually do? You guys have the voice of your customers. You have access to the voice of your customers. Your job is to extrapolate that. Extrapolate that from your customers, share that with your marketing organization, and share that with your sales team. That's why the key CSM team was so successful, because they have that level of relationship. They understand those personal stories. They can pull them out and give them to the AEs, and together they can go to that company and upsell and add on and help them not churn. Because guess what? That champion that bought the product, they don't fully understand the impact on Sue. You can elevate that story to Sue. You can elevate Sue's story to that champion, and now all of a sudden, it makes it a lot more real and tangible. This is so important, and no company does this really well. And in fact, here's a little twist on this. I challenge you guys to go look at all of your first call decks at your existing company today. Go look at your first call decks. And I want you to tell me, in the first 5 slides, in the whole deck, when do they talk about their customers? Most first call decks, they talk about the customers like slide 10, 11, maybe 12. Because guess what? The first 10 slides are all about me. Look at me. Look at all our customers. Here's my logo slide. Here's what we do. Here's why you should care. That's so selfish and arrogant. Who are we, Kanye West? What the hell? Right? Flip it around. Take that voice of your customer, put that first. So how you start off what you say is, guess what? Over the last 10 years, we've learned a shit ton. Yes, I like to swear. Sorry, I apologize if I offend you. We've learned a lot from our customers. And here's what they've told us. Here's what they all struggled with. Because that's what they're telling us. And then, oh, by the way, there's this person named Sue. So here's this real life emotional story about Sue. That's what gets people hooked. 1, we love stories. 2, you all need to become storytellers. That's how you do it. And you have access to better data than anybody else in the entire company has. So make sure you get on message and extrapolate those personal stories from the last 20 yards, or as Brad would say, the last millisecond. And share that with the broader organization. So valuable. All right, those are my 4 tips. Just remember this. One thing, stress this again. I am not saying go back to your organization and saying, oh, we all have to become salespeople because we'll be more valuable to the company. No. I'm saying shift your focus and think about driving revenue in a company, because revenue is a long-term relationship. It means that it is ongoing and it's dynamic. It's never ending. It means we're wildly, passionately focused on making sure that our customers are happy, successful, and buying more. Because if they're happy and successful, why wouldn't they buy more? Right? Why not? Don't just stop at happy and successful. Happy, successful, and buying more. Because that's what we want to do. In the world of SaaS, it is all of our responsibilities to be focused on revenue. It's not just sales anymore. No longer do we have these silos, marketing, sales, and CS, which used to be support. They're all now integrated. So share that information with one another. And if you build this key CSM function, that is like your anchor to do that. And remember this. I fundamentally believe that customer success can have the biggest impact on driving revenue. Our key CSM team was a handful, it was 5 people, and they drove $6 million in ARR in 1 year. So guess what Box has done this year? Their entire CS organization is now a key CSM team. The entire CS organization is now focused on net retention. Not just adoption, not just use cases, but net retention. And the entire CS organization is paid out quarterly. That's crazy. But guess what? It matters. Makes a difference. It adds revenue to the bottom line, which we all care about. Because at the end of the day, remember, customer success is a mindset, it's not an organization. Customer success is a mindset, it's not an organization. And the simple fact is, a satisfied customer is the best business strategy of all, without question. And on that note, I say thank you.